Imagine walking home at night. The streets are empty, the lamps flicker above you, and the only sound you hear is your own footsteps. Then suddenly, silence. No wind, no cars, not even your own breath. You blink, and a man who wasn't there before is now standing under the streetlight. You look again, he's gone. In Ravenshollow, they call him the Phantom. Because when he arrives, people vanish without a trace. Nobody sees him come. Nobody sees him go. But every time, the streets go silent. Ravenshollow was never meant to be quiet. It was a city of neon and noise, where life spilled into the streets long after midnight. Street vendors shouted out sizzling offers, taxi horns blared impatiently, and laughter from half-drunk students echoed through alleyways. But silence? Silence didn't belong here. On this night, the silence pressed down like fog. A paper cup rolled across cracked asphalt, carried by a faint breeze. A stray dog paused, ears pricked high, then bolted into darkness. Even the street lamps seemed reluctant to glow, buzzing with hesitation. The loudest cities carry the quietest dangers, and when the streets grow silent, it is not peace that follows, it is warning. At 11:48 p.m., the first call came in. Michael Green, 27 years old, a delivery driver, never made it home. His van was found at an intersection, engine still running, headlights cutting through empty space, no blood. No broken glass. No sign of struggle. The driver's seat was empty. The radio still crackling with static. Neighbors said they hadn't seen a thing. The cameras facing the intersection glitched at the exact moment Michael should have passed through. 1 minute, the van moved. The next, it simply stopped, driver gone. Every crime has a cause, but sometimes the cause hides in plain sight, waiting for the right night to strike. Pinned to the van's windshield was a scrap of paper, half crumpled by the night air. Written in hurried scrawl were 4 words. Don't follow the silence, BY dawn. Ravenshollow felt different. Shopkeepers rolled down shutters earlier than usual. Mothers kept children indoors. The chatter that usually filled the markets was replaced by whispers in cafes. Strangers leaned across tables and murmured, "Did you hear about the driver?" In offices, coworkers exchanged uneasy glances. He just vanished? And in every home, the unspoken truth was shared. If it could happen to him, it could happen to anyone. Fear spreads faster than fire, and it burns deeper too. A single spark of terror can choke an entire city into silence. Detective Daniel Ramirez had seen plenty in his career: gang violence, corruption scandals, robberies gone wrong. But nothing about Michael's disappearance sat right with him. He was in his early 30s, modest, determined. The kind of man who didn't just clock out when the shift ended. His colleagues sometimes mocked him for being too idealistic, but Ramirez knew one truth better than anyone. Justice isn't found in paperwork. Justice lives in persistence. When he examined the van, something struck him immediately. The scent of gasoline hung heavy in the air, yet the tank was almost full. On the ground, beside the curb, the faint imprint of boots, too large to be Michael's. And then, the note. Don't follow the silence. Ramirez held it in his gloved hand, reading the shaky scrawl again and again. His gut told him it wasn't a taunt. It was a warning, but when Ramirez brought the case to his superiors, they dismissed it. Probably a runaway, one officer muttered. Or maybe he owed the wrong people money, another shrugged. Paperwork shuffled. Coffee cups clinked. The city moved on, but Ramirez couldn't. He left the station late that night, rain dripping down the collar of his coat. As he walked the very street where Michael vanished, the hairs on his neck rose. The air carried a strange weight, as though the silence itself pressed against his chest. Some warnings are not written to be read. They are written to be felt. And if you ignore them, they do not forgive. From that moment on, Ravenshollow was no longer just a city to Ramirez. It was a living puzzle, a riddle whose answer lay hidden in the shadows. Michael Green's disappearance wasn't just an isolated tragedy. It was the opening note of something darker, something designed to spread fear like wildfire. Every storm begins with a cloud. Every tragedy begins with a choice. And in Ravenshollow, silence had just chosen its first victim. Ravenshollow was a city that thrived on noise, but within days of Michael Green's disappearance, that noise shifted into something else. Street markets still bustled, but laughter was clipped, cautious. Buses still roared down avenues, but conversations inside were whispers. Even the old jazz musician who usually played on the corner of 5th Street stopped bringing out his saxophone at night. Fear doesn't silence a city all at once. It creeps in, corner by corner, until one day you realize the song has stopped playing. Parents now walk their children to school in pairs. Teenagers no longer loitered in alleys or parks. And while crime was nothing new to Ravenshollow, this was different. This wasn't fear of gangs. This wasn't fear of police. This was fear of something unseen. At the heart of the city stood Parker's Diner, a modest little place with checkered floors, sticky menus, and the kind of coffee that could keep a construction crew awake for hours. Lisa Parker, mid-50s, had run the place for decades. She wore her apron like armor, her hands toughened by years of wiping counters and flipping pancakes. But even she couldn't armor herself against the silence creeping into her diner. Customers came, but they didn't linger. They didn't laugh. Even the jukebox, once the diner's beating heart, stayed unplugged, and Lisa's son, a college kid who worked nights at the counter, was one of the few who still tried to shrug it off. He'd wipe tables with a grin and tell his mother, "It's just rumors. Ghost stories don't walk into diners." Lisa never believed him. Mothers know. They don't always explain it, but they feel it. A mother can sense a storm long before the first raindrop falls. One night, her son locked up as usual. At 11:15 p.m., Lisa waved at him through the glass door. She swore she saw him walk toward his car, but as she reached for her purse to leave, something froze her. Out of the corner of her eye, under the glow of the streetlight, she noticed a figure standing unnaturally still. Too tall, too rigid, its face blurred by shadow. When she turned fully, it was gone. Her son never came home. The next morning, his car was found parked neatly at the curb. Keys in the ignition. Door ajar. Inside, on the dashboard, another note. The silence is not empty. Detective Ramirez stood at the diner the following morning, staring at Lisa Parker's trembling hands as she retold what she saw. Lisa wasn't hysterical. She wasn't exaggerating. Her voice was steady, but her eyes, weary, red-rimmed, held the weight of a mother who knew. Ramirez knelt beside her. "Tell me exactly what you saw. A man, or not a man," she whispered. He didn't move, didn't breathe. He just waited. Ramirez took in every word. He knew the department would dismiss this too, call it imagination, hysteria, grief. But he didn't care. Truth rarely comes wrapped in neat packages. Sometimes it shakes, sometimes it cries, sometimes it whispers from the lips of those who've lost the most. Back at headquarters, Ramirez pushed the case again. He presented both disappearances, the notes, the strange consistency of cars left running, but the captain brushed him off. "We can't chase shadows, Ramirez. People disappear all the time." Ramirez clenched his jaw. He wanted to shout, wanted to grab them by their badges and demand they listen. But he didn't. He knew better. Instead, he walked out into the night rain, his coat heavy, his shoes splashing through puddles. Ravenshallow's skyline flickered with neon, but to him, it felt like the city itself was holding its breath. Bureaucracy has many enemies, but its greatest is courage. And courage never waits for permission. By now, Ravenshollow was unraveling. Bars closed early. Nightclubs, once bursting until dawn, stood half empty. Even the subway trains were quieter, commuters staring at their feet rather than meeting each other's eyes. That it wasn't just fear of being taken. It was fear of not knowing how. Terror isn't built on what you see. It thrives on what you don't. Neighbors began trading stories. Lights flickering before someone disappeared. Security cameras freezing into static. A strange low hum only some could hear. Some said it was a ghost. Others whispered it was a demon. But the most chilling rumor of all was the simplest. He's real. He's here. And you won't see him leave. Standing at the diner window late one night, Ramirez watched the empty street lamp where Lisa swore the figure had stood. The light flickered once, twice, then steadied. His hand drifted to his notepad. He wrote 3 words in sharp, deliberate strokes. Pattern. Light. Silence. He closed the book, jaw tightening. Every city has its monsters. Some wear masks, some wear badges, and some wear silence itself. But the only way to fight a monster is to refuse to close your eyes. And with that, Ramirez made a vow. He would not look away. Not this time. Not until he found the truth hiding in Ravensshallow's silence. Detective Ramirez didn't believe in coincidences. In his experience, every so-called random detail was a clue waiting to be noticed. He spread the files across his desk. Michael Green's van, Lisa Parker's son's car, the notes left behind. 2 victims, 2 vehicles left running, 2 sets of cameras that glitched at the exact moment of disappearance. And then there was the streetlight. Both crime scenes had faulty lamps, buzzing and flickering like dying fireflies. Ramirez tapped his pen against the page. His instincts screamed. Coincidence is the favorite mask of truth. But pull hard enough, and the mask always slips. The next day, Ramirez walked the neighborhood near Parker's diner. He asked questions, knocked on doors, stood in cramped living rooms where tired families offered fragments of their memories. One old man swore he heard a hum, low and throbbing, just before the streetlight near his building went out. A woman clutching her child said she felt the air grow heavy, like her chest was being pressed in. Another man simply shook his head and whispered, "It wasn't a man. It was something else." Ramirez wrote it all down. The truth of a city doesn't always live in the police files. Sometimes it lives in the whispers of those who stay awake when the rest of the world is sleeping. Back at the precinct, Ramirez replayed hours of camera footage. Over and over, the same glitch appeared. At the exact moment of disappearance, the footage collapsed into static, but buried within that static was something unusual. A vibration, a distortion, like a sound wave caught on tape. He amplified it, filtered it, and there it was, a low, pulsing hum. Almost imperceptible, but there. Ramirez leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. What you hear can deceive you. What you don't hear can destroy you. Ramirez mapped the cases across Ravenshollow, the van, the diner, other reports of strange sightings. Every pin on the map had something in common. Each location was near a faulty lamp post, buzzing and flickering. He visited the power company, requesting maintenance logs. They showed repeated service calls for the same lamps, but no cause ever identified. Workers complained about equipment failing, tools breaking, lights dying again within days. To Ramirez, the lamps weren't coincidence. They were invitations. Darkness doesn't just happen. It is engineered, moment by moment, until you're too blind to see the hand reaching for you. One night, Ramirez received a call from a janitor at a local high school. The man insisted he saw something while locking up in the flicker of the parking lot lamp. He saw a figure standing motionless, as if carved from shadow. His coworker shouted from across the lot, and when he turned back, the figure was gone. The janitor's hands shook as he described it, but his final words chilled Ramirez. "Detective, it wasn't that he disappeared. It was like, my mind stopped noticing him, like I was made to forget." Ramirez left the school with a gnawing truth. This wasn't just about vanishing. This was about perception. Someone, or something, was bending reality itself. The deadliest predator isn't the one you see. It's the one you're trained to forget. After weeks of digging, Ramirez noticed something chilling. The disappearances all happened within 13 minutes of midnight. Not 11. Not 1. Always between 11:47 p.m. and 12:00 a.m. That window, those 13 minutes, was the predator's hunting ground. Ramirez scribbled across his notebook. He moves with silence. He hides in hums. He hunts in time. He stared at the words, fists clenched. For the first time since Michael Green vanished, he felt he wasn't chasing shadows anymore. He was chasing a man. Every pattern hides a story, and every story hides a truth. But only those willing to bleed for it ever uncover both. The media gave him a title, The Phantom of Ravenshollow. Newspapers plastered grainy sketches of a faceless figure across their front pages. Talk shows debated whether he was real. Superstitions bloomed like weeds. Some said he was a ghost. Others, an urban legend. But Ramirez knew better. Legends don't leave boot prints. Legends don't manipulate sound waves. Legends don't write notes. This was no phantom. This was a man. A predator cloaked in silence. Legends are born when truth is too terrifying to name. But no legend exists without a hand pulling the strings. By now, the department wanted Ramirez off the case. His captain told him to drop it. His colleagues whispered he was losing it, but Ramirez ignored them all. He knew the phantom would strike again. And this time, Ramirez would be waiting. He parked his car under a faulty lamp in Ravenshallow's East End, recorder running, revolver ready. He watched the clock tick closer to midnight. The air grew heavy. The lamp flickered. The hum began. Ramirez's pulse quickened. Some wars are not fought in daylight. They are fought in the silence between seconds, where every heartbeat could be your last. Detective Daniel Ramirez sat in his car beneath the flickering lamp, every nerve in his body wound tight. The dashboard clock ticked, 11:46 p.m., the recorder word, capturing every faint sound. His revolver rested on the passenger seat, cold steel waiting. The streets stretched empty around him. No cars, no footsteps, no laughter. Just silence so thick it clung to his skin. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to breathe while fear claws at your lungs. At 11:49 p.m., the air shifted. A low hum rose from nowhere, vibrating in the marrow of his bones. The street lamp above him buzzed, sputtered, then dimmed. Ramirez's chest tightened. Sweat rolled down his temple. His recorder spiked with distortion, the sound growing louder, pulling at the edges of his mind. And then he saw it. Across the street, a figure simply appeared, not walking, not running, not even stepping into place. One moment the pavement was empty. The next, the figure was there, still, rigid, face blurred by the shadows. Some enemies you meet with fists. Others you meet with faith. But the most dangerous of all are the ones you meet in silence. Ramirez's hand hovered near his revolver. He willed himself to move, but the hum pressed harder, freezing his limbs. His vision trembled, edges of reality distorting. The figure advanced. One step, then another, its head tilted unnaturally, as though listening to something only it could hear. The detective's breath quickened. Every instinct screamed to run, but he forced himself to stay. When the world goes dark, do not measure yourself by the size of your fear. Measure yourself by the size of the step you refuse to take backward. The phantom reached the edge of the lamp's glow. For a fleeting instant, the light caught his face, not a ghost. Not a demon. A man, mid-40s, pale skin, hollow eyes. A device strapped across his chest, wires, coils, a generator humming with the same low vibration tearing through Ramirez's head. Ramirez's stomach dropped. This wasn't supernatural. This was science. A weaponized soundwave device designed to bend perception, blind cameras, and paralyze prey. Monsters wear many masks. Some hide in shadows. Some hide in stories. But the worst hide behind the inventions of men. The phantom raised a hand, palm glowing faintly with a small, flickering device. The hum intensified, rattling the windows of Ramirez's car. His vision swam, ears ringing with violent static. For a heartbeat, he felt himself slipping, consciousness tearing away. His revolver blurred in his sight, but then he remembered the first note. Don't follow the silence. It clicked. If silence was the weapon, then resisting it meant focusing not on the hum, but on the gaps between. Ramirez dropped his gun, clamped his hands over his ears, and forced his mind to track the moments of quiet that pulsed between each vibration. And in those gaps, he saw the phantom falter. His form flickered, distorted, not vanishing, but weakening. Every lie carries cracks, and the truth waits in the spaces between. With a surge of adrenaline, Ramirez lunged from the car. He tore the recorder from his dashboard and slammed it into the phantom's chest device. Sparks exploded. The hum fractured into shrieks, then collapsed into silence. The phantom staggered back, clutching his chest, eyes wide with fury. Ramirez raised his revolver, finally able to steady his aim. The silence broke with a single word from the detective's lips. Enough. Even silence has a breaking point. The phantom fell to his knees. Without the device, he was just a man. Ordinary, vulnerable. Ramirez ripped the machine free, wires snapping. The hum died completely. The street lamp flickered back to life, casting its pale glow across the cracked pavement. The man gasped, chest heaving. His eyes weren't demonic. They weren't supernatural. They were human, empty, broken, consumed by obsession. Ramirez's hands trembled as he cuffed him. Not from fear, but from the weight of the truth. Ravenshollow had been terrorized not by a ghost, but by a man who knew how to twist silence into a weapon. Evil does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it silences. And sometimes it wears the face of a man convinced he cannot be seen. Moments later, distant sirens pierced the night. Real sound, real noise. Life returning to the city as officers rushed in. Ramirez stood over the fallen phantom, sweat dripping down his brow, chest heaving with exhaustion. The silence had ended. For now, noise is the song of survival. Where silence reigns unchecked, fear grows roots. But when sirens sing, hope breathes again. The man sat cuffed in the back of the squad car, his device bagged and tagged. He stared ahead, unblinking, as if the silence still clung to him. Detective Ramirez leaned against the hood, the cool metal grounding him. His lungs still fought for steady breaths. His ears still rang from the hum. But the night was no longer silent. Police radios crackled. Officers shouted orders. Neighbors peeked out from windows, murmuring in disbelief. When a city breathes again, it exhales in chaos. But chaos is better than silence, because chaos means life. The department moved quickly. The man's name was never released. His motive never fully explained. The sound device was classified, swept away into evidence vaults. Some said he was a failed engineer. Others whispered he was part of something larger, testing technology never meant for the public. But the truth? It stayed buried. Ramirez gave his statement, but he knew what would happen. The city would get its noise back, and the phantom would fade into rumor, myth, and half-remembered whispers. Justice isn't always about answers. Sometimes it's about restoring what was stolen, even if the truth must remain in the shadows. Within weeks, the streets of Ravenshollow began to heal. Markets grew loud again. Students laughed on street corners. Buses carried chatter and songed at A.T. Parker's diner. The jukebox came back to life. Lisa Parker played her son's favorite record every evening, not because he had returned, but because his memory deserved to echo through the diner walls. Grief is not silence. Grief is the sound of love refusing to die. Late one night, Ramirez walked alone down the same street where the phantom had first appeared to him. The lamp flickered once, then steadied. He paused, hands in his coat pockets, staring up at the glow. The city hummed around him, cars in the distance, laughter spilling from a bar, the faint bark of a dog. And in that sound, Ramirez felt peace. But he also knew the truth. Silence could return. Another man, another obsession, another device. Evil doesn't vanish when captured. It waits. Evil does not end. It pauses, it waits, it lurks. The duty of the living is not to pretend it's gone, but to remain watchful when the streets grow quiet. Ramirez turned his collar against the wind and walked on. The city's noise wrapping around him like armored, he knew Ravenshollow would never truly forget. The story would live on in whispers. The phantom who came and went without being seen. But Ramirez also knew something greater. That night, the silence had been broken. And sometimes, that's enough. The streets went silent. Nobody saw him come or go. But silence, like darkness, is never eternal. And in the end, one truth always remains. Even silence can be broken. Remember this. Silence can be safety, but it can also be danger. Do not trust the quiet when your instincts scream. Do not ignore the shadows that move without sound. For in every city, every town, there are those who thrive in the hush of fear. And the only way to defeat them is simple. Keep listening.